what if I told you that writing one massive check for child support in Florida does not mean you're done paying child support? Because in Florida, even a signed agreement, even a lump sum payment, does not override the child's rights. And that's where a lot of people, especially high-income earners, get this very wrong. Today, we're breaking down the truth behind the Anthony Edwards headlines and what an 18-year upfront child support payment would actually look like under Florida law. The headline versus reality. You may have seen the headlines claiming NBA star Anthony Edwards was going to pay child support for the next 18 years upfront in one lump sum. Whether that report was accurate or not, the question it raised is a real one. Can you pay child support upfront in Florida and be done forever? Short answer, no. And trying to do so can actually backfire. How child support actually works in Florida. First, let's talk about how Florida calculates child support. Florida uses net monthly income, not gross. That means we start with gross income and subtract allowable deductions like taxes, health insurance, and mandatory retirement. That calculation comes directly from Florida Statute 61.30. We also factor in overnights. If a parent has 20% or more time sharing, Florida uses what's called the gross-up method, which can significantly affect the final number. The result is a presumptive monthly child support obligation, not a lifetime buyout. The biggest legal misconception. Here's the part most people, and frankly, some lawyers, misunderstand. Child support is not a right of the parents. Child support is a right of the child. That distinction is everything in Florida. Under Florida law, parents cannot contract away a child's right to future support. So even if both parents sign an agreement that says, "I accept this lump sum and I'll never ask for support again," a Florida court is not bound by that agreement if the child later needs support. The court always retains jurisdiction. Why lump sums are dangerous in Florida? Here's the real risk. Let's say you pay a massive lump sum today. 5 years later, that money is gone. Inflation, poor investments, life happens. If the child's needs aren't being met, the court can still order you to pay more child support. That's not hypothetical. Florida courts have been crystal clear on this. You cannot buy your way out of child support obligations if the child later needs financial support. So instead of certainty, a lump sum can actually expose you to double payment. The high-income exception. What Florida does differently. Now, Florida does handle high-income cases differently. And this is where the Anthony Edwards conversation gets interesting. In cases involving extremely high earners, Florida courts recognize that guideline child support can exceed a child's actual monthly needs. That's where what's commonly called a good fortune trust comes in. Based on Florida Supreme Court precedent, courts can order that excess support be placed into a trust or a guardianship account for the child's future benefit, education, healthcare, long-term security. This protects the child without handing the other parent unrestricted access to millions of dollars up front. Why structure matters more than amount. The biggest mistake I see is people focusing on how much they're paying instead of how it's structured. In Florida, a lump sum labeled as support can still be modified. A lump sum labeled as property distribution cannot be enforced as support. And poorly drafted agreements can leave you exposed on both ends. This is why high-income child support cases require surgical legal drafting, not shortcuts. If you're dealing with child support in Florida, especially if you're a high earner or considering a lump sum resolution, do not rely on internet headlines or handshake agreements. You need a strategy that protects the child, protects your financial future, and actually holds up in a Florida courtroom. Visit nest-law.com to schedule a confidential consultation with our team.